Rachel? Good. Okay. All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the committee meetings for June 23rd, 2026. The elected body present, Mayor Mary Robichaux, Councilmember Aaron Brumley, Councilmember Christopher Zach, Councilmember Alan Sells, Councilmember Christine Hall, Councilmember Jennifer Philippi, Councilmember Sarah Beeson. I'm Randy Knighton, the city administrator, along with City Attorney David Davidson and Deputy City Clerk Rachel Rainey. The purpose of these committee meetings, of course, for the city departments to convey information to the mayor and council and discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda and provide timely updates of vital information central to the operation of city government. And by ordinance, the committee consists of the elected body as well as the city administrator, who serves as chair of committee meetings. This is a public meeting, but not a public hearing, and therefore, while we certainly welcome many of the members of the public who are here, we do not normally take public comment at these meetings. They're taken on the second and fourth Mondays of each month, and the fifth Monday in open forum, upcoming on June 29th at 7 o'clock p.m. We do encourage residents to reach out to us and also engage our online platforms. We also encourage you to report any issues or concerns to our web service portal, and always check Roswell365.com and Roswell Connections for meetings and events and departmental information. With that, the first item on the agenda are the minutes from the June 9th, 2026 committee meetings. We'll entertain a motion. Motion by Mayor Robichaux, second by Councilmember Zach. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, that moves forward and passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Item number 2 is listed on the agenda is the consideration of a resolution to apply for and accept a National Endowment for the Arts NEA grant for art project grant in an amount not to exceed $60,000, presented by Stephen Malone, Director of Recreation and Parks, Historic and Cultural Affairs. Mr. Malone.
Yes, thank you, sir. Good evening. This grant would allow our department to partner with local playwriter Maya Lawrence, along with students from Spelman College and Morehouse College, to create a theatrical work rooted in Roswell's history and really focused on the stories of freedom, citizenship, and the American experience. The project that the grant we're asking for would use a story surrounding Nancy Jackson, who was an enslaved woman who successfully sued James Stephen Bullock for her freedom. So we would be working with the students as a catalyst to kind of create some research, collaborative writing, and performance that would ultimately end in it being staged, fully staged reading at the Roswell Cultural Arts Center. And that kind of brings the story to life for the community. The project truly aligns directly with the NEA priorities, which are related to arts education, historic storytelling, and partnerships with historically Black colleges and universities. Historically, our department has had a strong record with the NEA grants. We've successfully implemented 5 grants with this organization since 2019. So we've had a good partnership with the grants that we've submitted for them. As stated, the financial request is up to $60,000 from the city's grant contingency fund, which would serve as the required one-to-one match for the grant, and the total project budget would be $120,000. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Yes, Mayor Robichaux.
Just the 5 previous grants, were they in the same range of award, or?
Typically, they've been all over the spectrum. NEA grants kind of change their scopes, and they generally have a different platform that you can pick from each time. We've been all over the place with the NEA organization.
Further questions or comments? Any clarifications needed? All right. We'll entertain a motion. Motion by Council Member Beeson. Second by Council Member Brumley. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right. 4 unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item, item number 3, is the consideration to approve a construction contract in the amount of $9,489,436.50 for the Riverside Road T-Splosh, that's Transportation Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax Project and Budget Amendment 35042200-06-22-26 in the amount of $1,454,580 for the Fulton County Waterline Intergovernmental Agreement funding with a total budget authorization of $10,721,901.50. Mr. Flager.
Yes, I'm going to let Greg present this. He has moved this project through to this point, so we are ready to let it for construction.
Thank you. So we're just going to give just a brief background of the project real quick before we talk about the construction contract. So this project, the Riverside Road Corridor project, this corridor was identified in the adopted Roswell bicycle and pedestrian master plan. It did identify sidewalks, multi-use trail, and bike lanes along this corridor. This was part of the T-Splosh 2 referendum in 2021 with a budget of $8.7 million. We have had various public meetings, primarily in 2022. There's a little bit, some stakeholder meetings in late 2021, and then in early 2022, once we got the budget approved with T-Splosh 2. But ultimately, we did get the concept approved through the mayor and council in October of 2022. And that's just what I want to walk you guys through a little bit on this slide. So again, this is a corridor improvement project, primarily adding buffered bike lanes. This will fill one of the largest gaps in our network right now. The bike lanes basically end at State Route 9 right now on Azalea. The Historic Gateway project will continue the bike lanes to Riverside Park, and then this project picks up at Riverside Park right here that's currently under construction. So the bike lanes will start here at Riverside Park with this project and go east to Old Alabama and connect to the other bike lanes on Riverside at the Old Alabama intersection. Along with the bike lanes, we do have continuous sidewalk on the north side that's being constructed, and then the big upgrade is the continuous multi-use trail that'll be on the south side. There are some segments out there right now. We are trying to retain as much as we can. Keep in mind that this concept was from 2022. We've had further coordination with Rec and Park, so this blue line, I would say, is not completely accurate. We are retaining as much as we can, but there is a little bit more multi-use trail that's moving, I would say, closer to the road. Basically from where ASAN Phase 1 was, we're actually bringing the multi-use trail up closer to the road in Don White Park, and that's actually going to help the reconstruction of the Don White Park with the Recreation and Parks Department. In addition to that, we do have a new roundabout that is being constructed at River Lake Drive in the Catholic Church. We have a new signal that's going in at ASAN Phase 2, and that is Taman Drive. And then we do have a pedestrian hybrid beacon going in near River Landing Drive. And then in addition to all of that, we are upgrading, so the existing signals, I think, are mainly on span wire. All the existing signals at Riverside Park, Dogwood, and then Old Alabama are getting upgraded to mast arms as well. This is just a top-down view of what the concept would look like with the buffered bike lanes. This is the sidewalk on the north side. And then the multi-use trail is on the south side. It's on the next, I'll show it on the next slide. But yes, and that pretty much talked about this, 8 to 10 foot multi-use trail on the south side of Riverside. And then there's so we've got several pedestrian crossings that'll make it a lot safer than what it is today. And then this is just one more view, kind of this is your typical cross section, showing the two travel lanes, two 10-foot lanes with the buffered bike lanes, 4-foot bike lanes on each side, and then the 10-foot multi-use trail on the south side and the 5-foot sidewalk on the north side. So as far as the construction contract, we did have 11 bids that were submitted by the June 2nd, 2026 deadline, which is really a lot for this type of project. So it's very good. It's very competitive between the 11 bids. We have completed our review and are recommending awarding to Backbone Infrastructure. They have been deemed the lowest responsible bidder at $9.4 million, and we're asking for a budget authorization of $10.7 million. With the budget approval, with the budget amendment approval, we will have the funding for the 10.7 in the Riverside Road project account. The funding breakdown is shown there below. It's 9.2 is the city's responsibility, and then the 1.4 is coming from Fulton County. So it would be reimbursable up to the 1.4 for the water line improvements related to this project. And with that, we'll answer any questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. This is very, very exciting. It's been a long time coming. These projects, as we know, take a long time to come to fruition, but I appreciate all the work that's been done. My question is, this work, is it going to be done in tandem with the park, or how, can you speak to how you've sort of coordinated with the park project and perhaps provide a timeline when this will get done? And
Yeah, so we've had a lot of coordination with the CIP team and the Recreation and Parks Department on this project. You know, we kind of outlined that the Riverside Park kind of needed to start first, and then this project, and then the Don White project would come kind of after that, and hopefully wrap up at the same time as this is wrapping up. So our project is supposed to take about 2 years. That's the construction length for the contract. So we're looking at, you know, summer, early fall, 2028. So for completion, yes. Yep.
And just to follow up, and the Georgia 400 project that GDOT is doing, they've cleared some land just to the west of 400, down close to
Yeah, near
Riverside.
Yeah.
What's happening there, and is that going to coordinate or impact anything that we're doing?
Yeah, so we're actually having a coordination meeting on that tomorrow. So some of that is related to some of the stormwater stuff that they're doing. So yes, we want to ensure any storm infrastructure that they have to do along Riverside is coordinated with this project, and they may be able to get some stuff in early, so we don't have to impact our road as we move forward.
At one time, we had discussed maybe a land swap with them, or looking at property for additional parking in that area.
I believe they are looking at putting some parking down there. I think that was part of the city's agreement for them to buy some of that land.
Thank you.
Yes. Councilmember Beeson.
Can you go back to the bike lane, the buffered bike lane spec? That one. My understanding is that this was approved in October of 22, so that predates me very slightly on council. Was there any feedback solicited from the public on this, on if there was any interest or demand for protected bike lanes instead of buffered bike lanes?
We definitely did consider that. Part of the issue was that would be a wider footprint, and being in the MERPA corridor, it had some issues with the floodplains and whatnot. So that's why we kind of landed on the buffered bike lane, which is doing this.
That's helpful context. Thank you.
Councilmember Hall.
And they also worked with Bike Roswell and several other cycling groups, and basically they're matching kind of what's on Azalea already.
Councilmember Zach.
This may be a question purely out of curiosity. what's like the strategy of sidewalk, bike lane, and then multi-use trail? Is that typical? Is there a strategy? Is there a thought? And this is, again, kind of asking from a broad perspective of, like, in a lot of ways, it's like the multi-use to me is where a lot of the bikes go, and then we now have 2 bike lanes and now a separate sidewalk. So I'm just kind of curious what the thought is.
Yeah, so that's just kind of the complete street policy of just allowing, all users access. Especially with these neighborhoods on the northern part, they may not be able to cross. We want them to cross at safe spots. So whether they cross over here at this new pedestrian hybrid beacon, or whether they walk, along the north side here and then cross at the new signal. That's just kind of the thought of providing that sidewalk on the north side.
Councilmember Beeson?
Oops, sorry. Also feedback on the complete streets theory, as to why there would be a bike lane separate from multi-use trail. There's a difference between cyclist and bicyclist in the sense that cyclists are going to be going about up to 30 miles an hour on a bike. You don't want to have pedestrians conflicting with them on that, as opposed to my 6-year-old riding his bicycle on the multi-use trail. He's not a threat, other than the fact he can't ride in a straight line. But it allows different types of cyclists at different levels to be able to enjoy the street and use it without having conflicts with pedestrians.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Zach?
Kind of follow up on that. It would be a fair summarization of, in a perfect world, every time we do a development of a street, it should include all these elements. Fair enough. Thanks.
Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, we will entertain a motion to move this item forward. Motion by Councilmember Hall, second by Mayor Robichaux. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, that moves forward unanimously. Thank you very much. Item number 4, consideration of the FY 2026 mid-year budget amendment. That will be presented by Adam Novotny, Director of Finance.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Knighton. Good evening, everyone. Speaking of budget, here we are. So we're here to discuss the 2026 mid-year budget amendment that does a couple of different things within it. First, maintain public safety service levels. Secondly, restore essential operational services and address some critical infrastructure and technology needs. The amendment at a glance has a couple of different bucketed categories on here, including public safety and emergency readiness, parks, recreation, and community, facilities and infrastructure, technology and operations, and personnel and administration. And I would note on here too that in the parks and recreation bucket includes the operations at the mill for the summer. So that's a council directed item already. And then within the facilities and infrastructure is the funding gap for Nesbitt Lake dredging as well. So a couple of the things more in depth, allows us to have police staffing stabilization, some fire inclement weather staffing that from the 2 back-to-back weather events that we had back in January, school zone flasher updates, some ADA accessibility improvements, as I mentioned already, the Old Mill Park, summer operations, Microsoft Office 365 licensing, and a grants manager position, which I'd be selfish to say we desperately need. So on here, this goes through what we are readjusting in terms of revenue to be able to meet the accompanying expenditures. A couple of highlights on here. We do have some additional sales tax revenue increase capacity that we're going to recognize within this mid-year budget amendment, should it be approved. Insurance premium tax revenue increase, that's an annual amount. We anticipate that coming in a little higher than what we had originally budgeted based upon performance historically. Some cultural arts revenue updates. a little bit of short-term rental revenue, use of the IT fund balance for the Microsoft 365 licenses. There's some others in here, including some insurance claim dollars that we've already received, and some public safety headquarter relocation reimbursement for that purpose. And then the other one on here that's actually being adjusted downward is the adjustment to the school zone fine revenue. As I've said before, we're kind of a victim of our own success with some of that, where enforcement, in compliance rather than enforcement's already going up. And so we're adjusting that revenue downward at this point in the year that we may or may not yet achieve what we had originally projected. I know I'm happy with that. It's odd to readjust revenue downward and be happy about it, but Chief would agree with me on that, I believe, as well. So overall, our budget impact based upon the funding usages outlined previously and the funding sources identified, we have a net impact of $0 overall. So the budget in compliance with state law remains in balance, and we don't have any adjustments on that. So overall, our requested action on here is to approve the 2026 mid-year budget amendment that allows us to accomplish a lot of the identified needs. This really wasn't an all-encompassing wish list from folks. This was identified needs that we're addressing via the mid-year process, and I anticipate us having some fine-tuning again at the end of the year in regular tradition. I'd be happy to entertain any questions anyone may have.
Thank you, Mr. Novotny. Questions for Mr. Novotny? Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. Thank you for presenting that. So at the 1.3 million, basically 250,000 or so, or a little over that, are journal entries. Is that correct? I mean, you are reallocating the 365 that was Microsoft 365 that was allocated to the departments to basically making a journal entry. I'm just trying to get to the net real budget amendment that we're looking at is about $1 million.
So essentially, that's use of the fund balance within the IT fund. What we'll do on a periodic basis is do some readjusting and rebalancing on that, on whether or not the IT fund has collected enough or not enough, and we do a periodic adjustments kind of after an audited year to realign what that dollar total is. And so there is fund balance available to be able to use for the 365 licenses.
Yeah.
I don't know that I necessarily agree with the characterization of a journal entry, but I get where you're coming from. Sure.
It's more of a shuffling between the accounts versus actually looking at our actual expenditures and projected expenditures through the end of the year and other income items and projected income items. So I was just trying to move that out, because typically in years past, and I know this predates you, so we've had a more robust mid-year budget processes. If Lynn's in here, she probably knows where we've really actually combed through. We have 6 months of data, and we're able to perhaps find more opportunities where we can come up with the wish list items. I know that the wish list will be, have no top from what the departments would like, and if it was endless, we'd love to give it to them. One thing that I'm disappointed in is that the Chickering dredging is not part of the mid-year budget, which was a little over 300,000. Now, we also have the contingency fund, and I know you probably can't answer this here, but it started out at 1.3 million, and in a conversation I had with Mr. Gottschall, he said that some of that was expended, that went towards some costs, but is there roughly 700,000 or 800,000 left of that?
I'd have to get that number for you probably by the next time that this agenda item goes to council. I can have that probably tomorrow, honestly. There's a difference between what's actually expended in operational contingency versus what's earmarked for something else. So I just need to get clarity on that list on where that happens to land.
Because going into this year, I mean, stormwater is a priority. Stormwater was a priority. Typically, it had been funded as needed out of contingency. I mean, we had all those discussions previously. So given that the year has, half the year is gone, it would be probably not a great risk to fund it out of the contingency in this mid-year budget versus, versus any other options.
Yeah, I would say, the council's direction will gladly take. At this point in the year, being roughly a little over halfway through the year, exhausting that operational contingency would make me frankly a little nervous. In the event that sales tax doesn't continue to come in at kind of the pace that it has been. A lot of the economic activity that we've experienced in the last year, I think, have a lot of people scratching their heads on. Nobody's worried about war. Nobody's worried about this. There's an Ebola outbreak.
Well, and there's a FIFA Cup going on in Atlanta.
So I don't know that there's a lot that we could predict with any accuracy around some of that. Now, again, that's council's will to be determined on the course of action. But in the event that, God forbid, that we have a facilities issue or something else, that's why that's kind of sitting there. So certainly that's something we could explore. And I don't mean to tempt fate, but there's, facilities things make me, frankly nervous. And I know Director Watson would agree with me on that in the event that we have to replace something on the fly or something that's really unforeseen and unbudgeted, that's why that exists. But happy to take direction from this body.
Sure,
as well.
and we have a $100 million general budget, and I mean, we've adjusted $1 million halfway through the year. I would just like to put that in context, that there's confident there are a lot more opportunities.
Councilmember Brumley, I think I saw first.
Yes, I just want to bring out the fact that I believe Ms. Hall was supposed to recuse herself from talking about Chickering because you are a resident of it.
I'm excusing myself from voting, but I can certainly speak to the budget and opportunities in the budget.
But it just seems unseemly that you are pushing for finishing up, for adding this in this year.
I'm a resident, and I'm a resident of Chickering, and so I'm able to speak to these things.
City Attorney Ken Opine.
So basically, what the ordinance, the ethics ordinance says is not to have any discussions or participation in something that you have a direct pecuniary interest in. The budget itself, you do not, but if it has to do with Chickering, then you probably would.
So I do plan on recusing myself from the vote.
Councilmember Beeson and then Zach.
I had a similar point to Councilmember Brumley. Just as a reminder, given the fact that you did recuse on all discussion and you're financially vested because it would benefit your personal property, which is your home and your main asset. Also, there's precedent for that. I believe in Milton, there was a council member that was taken to court because he was a member of White Columns Country Club and was involved just in the discussion, not even the vote on the country club itself. So just vote of caution. And then speaking for just as a singular council member, I would much rather err on the side of caution when it comes to our contingent funds at this point in time, as opposed to trying to dip into those barely at the midpoint of the year. Instead, using our new additions to the ordinance and our new process that we put in place earlier this year, which Finance did give great guidance on of how we should approach the dredging ordinance, and trying to implement that next year as we look at next year's budgetary process for FY27.
Thank you, Councilmember Zach.
Hey, quick question, and you might not know this, but the room probably will. When does the janitorial services start?
It's an excellent question. For this item.
We've already started it. We're taking it out of other funds so that we can respond to the staff.
Fair enough. And partly why I'm asking is I think it's a nice thing to be able to speak to that we've done it. So is there like a rough timeline to say it started at this point, or we've increased janitorial services starting X?
Roughly 3 months ago.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. Any further comments or questions? Yes, Mayor Robichaux.
I guess I would just more echo Mayor Pro Tem Beeson's in the current situation, which is a lot is up in the air. Increases in gasoline. We spend almost $1 million is budgeted across our systems for diesel and gas. We know so far every month we're seeing a 33+% increase in that cost. We see, so I think it is conservative. It is mid-year. There are opportunities later to see if we can readjust, but going into this where we are, some of this is even based on some increased projections, which may not make it. I mean, to be honest, we're hoping, keeping our fingers crossed, but as you just said, so much of this is, it is good predictions and projections, but we all know sometimes those do not come through. So I think that it was the concept to make sure it was neutral for now, that we did not go inappropriately and without really a high, huge need into contingency funding right now where we are with the concept of, with the new ordinance passed on dredging, Chickering, because of the way in which it has been set up in the timeline, Chickering is the only organization, neighborhood eligible. So there's already the concept that they will be that request will be put into the 2027 budget and appropriately funded to that level, not just the 250 that was done in the 2026 when you had two projects, and that's where we got caught in that. And so it's that kind of concept to make it up. And also my understanding, just again, new to the whole dredging reimbursement thing, but my understanding is that literally the project has to pretty much be completed and paid for, and then the reimbursement occurs. So with an approval for Chickering in 2027 budget, basically the money would be hopefully released to them if the council approves that item, or budget items would be really getting the money January of 2027. So am I understanding the timelines? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Excellent points, ma'am.
Thank you. Councilmember Philippi.
Yeah, so I echo the concerns that we've heard here about our so many financial unknowns. I was very glad to see that the mayor did respond to some residents at Chickering, giving them the update that we were not able to accommodate at this time. So I appreciate that. Thank you. In the same vein that Councilmember Zach was asking about some of the staffing things, is it correct to assume that Old Mill Park has been staffed since around Memorial Day?
I'm getting nods from our,
Yes? Okay.
our recreation and parks friends.
And what's the status of the grants manager? Do we have an ad out, or where are we on that?
So, Mr. Knighton, if you'd like to.
Sure, yes. We have several resumes that we have reviewed, and I believe we're close to setting up a couple of interviews either late this week and early next week for the grants manager position.
Thank you.
Yes. Mayor Robichaud.
And again, I just for public information, and I guess for everyone's information, the grant manager position, we know right now we have basically sitting on the table some approvals that we have to manage through and get the second level of applications in of over $7 million worth of grants that we have gone through our first round. We've gotten approval. Now we have to go ahead and reapply. So this position is very important when we look at one new position being added, when we balance that against a probability of $7 million that we can bring into this for various things. So that's one of the considerations I would hope everyone understands also.
And to the folks listening who may or may not have applied, pay is commensurate with experience, not the amount of grant money brought in.
I understand that, but I'm saying to have the position.
Me too.
Councilmember Hall?
Thank you. And what is this other, the executive assistant? Who's that replacing? Or what is that position? Administration executive assistant.
Anybody knows?
I believe that's adding additional administrative support for the executive suite administration.
Yeah, that's essentially to support the 3 deputy city administrators.
So we have, can we just recap I thought, I'm sorry, I thought Jenny Lee is in a new
Correct.
EA. And we have Lori Lewis,
For the mayor's office,
and Kathy Baker,
for the city administrator. Yes, ma'am.
and Preston is in that area as well, Preston Thompson?
Yeah, Preston and, go ahead, Mayor. Preston and Lori support the mayor's office, and Kathy supports the city administrator.
Did we increase from the last time? I'm just trying to wrap my head around how many people we have. In the previous administrations we had, does this match what we had?
Let me think. We had previous administration, we had a press secretary. Before that, we had
And that was the Lori Lewis role.
Yeah, there was in the previous mayor's office, there were 2 additional staff people, a chief of staff and a support person that started out as an administrative assistant or executive assistant, and then was a press secretary type role in the mayor's office. Government affairs, I'm sorry.
So that was all wrapped up together? Okay.
Yes, in the mayor's
So
office.
we're just adding another 2 people?
yeah, 2.
That's okay. I mean, I just wanted to understand.
One executive
One
assistant and 1 grants manager.
Correct, yes.
Because the mayor's office was handling some grants before.
I'm not sure,
Katrina
No.
wasn't?
not to my knowledge, no. Councilmember Zach, and then Beeson.
Yeah, I was under the impression that this was for Jenny Lee, and if that's not true, let me confirm, that means there would be 2 executive assistants for the executive leadership group?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And partly just to throw it out there, it seems like when this came up, no one knew what this was or had a strong feeling about it. If that's true, I would motion to strike it.
Yeah, I think with some of the conversations early on with the previous, I would say, model on really doing a lot with, I would say, consultants and contract with some of the SEER stuff and everything else, and all of the workload that was kind of put that direction, taking that in-house from the deputy city administrators and economic development and all that other stuff. There was a desire to add additional support to make sure, as Councilmember Sells would say, that there was the white space to be able to get things done and not have to manage some of the more administrative parts of the job.
But in honesty, you added 3, there's 4 analysts now that took over a lot of that work.
The analyst group and the EA is 2 very different things. What things?
Is that in here?
What in there?
Is the analyst position?
The analyst groups are not new. The analysts are not new positions. Those were positions that were reclassified. So when I came from fire and Alex Thames came with me, the gentleman that did the fire station stuff, one of the analysts is that position there. Another one of the analysts, I think, was a budget analyst or a finance position that was converted. So those came from existing positions that were reclassified and repurposed to fill those analyst roles.
Councilmember Beeson.
I mean, keep in mind too, if we're going to be comparing apples to apples between a previous administration and this administration, we also have a $340,000 cost savings on a previous COO. So instead of having somebody who is a manager as opposed to a doer, we're looking at a much lower classification of doers within this regard with an administrative staff that supports the new deputy city administrators. I say new because within the last 3-4 years, not necessarily under this admin, but to free them up. Same with the business analyst. The intention, my understanding was to be able to have more firepower with the doing as opposed to the managing. And so therefore, we're getting more administrative staff at a significantly lower classification of salary as opposed to a $340,000 C-suite and trying to bolster that even higher.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, and I guess basically the way would be to look at the organization, look like what the comp structure is, because, I mean, just the comp structure before of the chief of staff was roughly 60,000. This chief of staff is a package of 250,000, which is about almost what we're paying the COO. So you add that 250,000 total comp, along with all the total comp of everything else, I mean, we're climbing up there. So I just want to, we're tight on the budget, we're adding another body, you know, that's why I'm looking at it and asking these questions.
Councilmember Beeson?
Understood, but also the previous chief of staff had no governmental experience whatsoever and came in getting paid $1 to start. Kind of devalue yourself right off the bat. With this regard, obviously the mayor is permitted to build their own staff as they want to based off of whatever's previously budgeted. So I think as long as the mayor operates within that staked out playground of whatever their budget allows them for, and understanding too that the chief of staff that was brought on had significant governmental experience at the Capitol in Fulton County. With regard to staffing internally, is your concern that we have too many administrative positions? Is it a spend? Is it the structure?
It's a structure and a spend. It's a spend, basically. It looks, we're adding a lot of people, and I just really don't have a vision as to how it looks financially. And if there's ways to maybe combine that. I mean, there was a long time where, I mean, God bless her, but Kathy Baker served as the executive admin for everybody. And, you know, I think when she's serving executive admin for people, that's appropriate to add support for her. But I'm just looking at a lot of admins being added, and we have a very well-priced government affairs person, not, you know, everybody deserves what they earn, but I'm just looking at the dollars that we're spending. That's it.
I mean, largely it's just a restructuring an organization based off of a new administration's goal, which is the previous administration wanted a corporatization of a government, and it was built based off of that with C-suite structure that was added. In this regard, I think that's trying to trim the fat off the top with the C-suite being broken down and instead reinvesting at a smaller level into administrative staff that can support the doing of functioning of how our city functions, as opposed to the managing of theory of how our city could function.
Perhaps this is a position that could wait until next year and didn't have to be in the mid-year budget, you know, and that's $40,000 that could go somewhere else to one of these asks of the police department or the parks department or another janitor. Those are the kinds of things that we maybe could consider.
Councilmember Brumley?
And so as far as the admins, I know Jenny's has a lot on her plate and she needs help. And we have to remember that Michelle used to be our full-time executive assistant, and now she's part-time. Yeah. I was talking about Michelle. She's not here anymore. She used to be our full-time assistant. Now we only have Shayna, who's part-time. So that's also part of the budget that we need to make sure that we still have that level of service.
Yeah. Any further questions or comments regarding the proposed mid-year budget amendment? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion. Motion by Councilmember Beeson, second by Councilmember Brumley. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, that passes. All opposed? All right, it passes 6-1. All right. The next item on the agenda is the discussion of downtown parking operations. Deputy City Administrator Sharon Izzo.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening, we are going to bring you an update on our parking operations. As you know, May 4th, we opened our parking deck, and we have been able to provide some of the metrics and some of the numbers that we're seeing there. It has been well used, and we're continue to be encouraged of the traffic that we're getting through the parking deck, and we have also started our on-street paid parking model. 12 Oaks is our partner in that. They have been working with us, and I thought it would be a good idea to bring them here to talk with you. They're going to give you a brief presentation. This is Michael Craig sitting next to me from 12 Oaks. He's going to give you a presentation, then happy to have a conversation about whatever's on your mind as far as parking goes. It has been great working with them. Asking all sorts of questions and hearing about their experiences both here locally and nationally. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael and let him do his presentation.
All right, thank you, Sharon. Thank you all for having me tonight. So May 1st is when we began our partnership with the city of Roswell. May 4th, the Green Street deck opened up. Since the opening of the deck, we've seen a lot of traffic over there and getting a lot of really good use. We've received many compliments from the citizens of Roswell on how happy they are with the deck. May 15th, we started the on-street parking program. There was already an on-street parking program, but paid. And then on that date, May 15th, we had some of our staff out there. We call them ambassadors, kind of letting people know, hey, this is now paid parking. Make sure you pay. We also started handing out what we call love letters to people who didn't pay. Just kind of politely letting them know, hey, you didn't pay. This is now a paid zone. Next time you visit us, please pay. May 30th, 2 weeks after that, we began issuing $0 warnings to customers who didn't pay instead of the love letters. 2 weeks after that, June 13th, we started issuing the paid citations. And we are now in full operation. These are some stats. These are through the 14th. This is the deck. So up to the 14th, we've had 9,374 visitors. And if you want through the 21st, which is not on this, we've had 12,041 visitors. That's just the deck. Our average daily visits are 246 per day. Highest single day was 619, which was the Thursday Live After 5, the second one. I believe that was Memorial Day weekend. Our average duration in the deck is about 3.5 hours. We're seeing the highest percentage of stays at 1 hour and 2 hour, about 25 and 30% for those. The next one is 3 hours. The transition from what the street was to what we did out there, we changed the signage. We added more signage within the paid zone, and this is an example of the paid signage out there. On the right, I believe that is one of the love letters. Yes. And again, we had plenty of public communication with people out there telling people this is now a paid parking area, helping people how to pay if they're not familiar with scanning the QR code or texting. There is no app to download. I want to make that clear. So it is just text to pay and a QR code, which is a 3-step process, very, very friendly and very, very fluid. I do also want to point out that on the street there are the pay kiosks. There's 2 of them, which would be the tall pay. We call it a pay on foot. It's a pay machine. You put your license number in, you put your credit card in. This is really good for people who are not technology savvy or don't want to mess around with the QR code or the text code, or maybe their phone died. They have their credit card, they can pay that. However, we are seeing that 93% of people are paying through the QR code or the text code rather than using those pay on foot machines. So it's an interesting stat. Let's see. This is the street area, and this is where we place the signs. All the red dots are the pay signs, which would be the blue sign if you can see it, and then above that with the yellow dot, the pay parking directional signs making clear that those spaces in that area are a paid zone. They exclude the handicap spaces. They are not required to pay. It also includes that back alley, sorry, which is the slide, or the east alley, which is the slide on the right. This is,
I'll jump in on this one. So one of the things that we heard here recently was some concerns about our handicap parking. And so we worked with transportation and the community development to take a look at the businesses that are down there and what the requirements would be for handicapped. And community development and transportation did agree that there was some need for some additional handicap parking. So as you know, we recently resurfaced that whole area here in the last couple of months. It was an ideal opportunity to take a look at the striping and take a look at the opportunity to add some handicap parking. So you'll see there at Heart of Roswell Park, the existing handicap spot is there at the end. We're going to be adding 2 new handicap spaces adjacent there. The reason being is that that's where we can get the ramp in and the curbing and such. So that's where the recommendation is to add 2 more handicap spaces. And then, of course, there are the 2 along Elizabeth Way. Councilmember Brumley?
Yes, Councilmember Brumley, I'm sorry. I was enamored by the map.
Thank you for this. I do have a handicap sticker, so to me, this was kind of like a personal problem, just making sure that, you know, I can always walk extra or paid, it doesn't matter. But it did seem that those spaces were consistently used, so we need a couple more. Isn't there one behind those businesses on Elizabeth Way?
There is on East Alley.
It is just one,
Yeah,
though.
there's just one there, I believe,
Okay.
yes.
All right, and that one, I actually unfortunately noticed that it's used for loading and unloading into the restaurants instead of actually used by people with a sticker. I don't know if it's a way to enforce or to move it to another place that is accessible but not used by the restaurants.
And the parking ambassadors have been instructed to, if there are violations of handicap in this area, they are to notify the city, and we're going to respond to that. So we are, it has given us a good opportunity. It's just another aspect of parking that we're now able to provide better oversight on. And so we have discussed that.
we have a non-911 number to reach Roswell PD. So we can call them, we inform them. If we catch it, we'll handle it. Sure.
Thanks.
Or we'll let PD handle it.
Councilmember Hall?
I just wanted to add in that folks have reached out to me for additional golf cart parking. They feel that there is not enough golf cart parking, and I will pass along that they felt that golf cart parking should be free wherever it is. I'm sharing the information, but that there seems to be not enough of it in the area. And just to encourage folks to take the golf carts and not drive the car, because you can get 2 golf carts in 1 car spot, so it just reduces some of the traffic.
Thank you. Councilmember Sells?
Hey, could you go to the, I think, I couldn't find the slide, the one where you have the average stay? So you said that's 55% is under 2 hours, right? The sum of the 1 and 2.
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. So correct. There's
Yeah, okay. So
54%.
So it seems like there is a pretty high percentage of all-day parkers, is what that says. Some 10 or 15%, or 8 hours, or 7 hours, or something like that.
Yeah, I'd have to pull up the data.
Are you seeing a lot of the all-day parking, as it were, or long-term parking?
It's like 9% is 12 to 24 hours.
Okay.
8 to 12 hours makes up 5.9%.
8 to 12? So over 8 hours is
Basically 6%.
8 to, but then you have 12 to 24 is how much?
Like 1%.
Okay. So the total is 6, would you say? Over 8?
7%.
It's 6%. Well, yes, combined 7%, correct.
And the 6 to 8, do you have that broken down?
No, it's 4 to 8, we have 15.5%.
Okay, so there's a fair number that are there for a good long time.
Correct.
That's moved off of the street,
Likely employees.
not in the Rockstar parking anymore. It's now on the deck. Okay, bonus. But are you seeing, and you may not know this, but are you seeing any downward pressure on prices for the other lots? Are they generally full? Or how is the parking situation in downtown Atlanta, downtown Roswell changed with the introduction of these 400 spaces?
I have not seen any less pressure on the lots within Roswell. I would say that there is more available parking, especially in the street area, for paying customers that are visiting these restaurants rather than the restaurant employees parking in those spaces.
Okay. That's what I figured, and that's what I think we will see the data ultimately says, is that there's still plenty of demand and that these will fill up. And the other spaces are being paid for. Hagen's still charging $10 a throw.
Correct.
You know, and so's the other lots as well.
We've seen, so just some of our observations, we've seen several employees parking at the deck. We've talked to several employees that are parking at the deck. They're glad to have the deck.
Sure.
So, yes, there are a lot of employees parking there. And there were a lot of employees parking in the street area before.
Good, thank you.
Mayor Robichaud?
So just a couple of points as we've talked about, you know, and as with police have said also, especially as some of the bars and restaurants closing late at night, that we make sure that our employers let their employees know that they can also get some form of a police escort per se back if they're in the deck at night, so there's not, you know, they feel safe. We don't want people not to feel safe, but that might just be something we want to make sure we continue to educate our employers and employees, because it is for there. The other thing, 2 other points is, as we've said, basically we've gotten mainly positive comments. The one thing also, but I will say, this has also allowed us some time to correct or make sure things are correct, such as the lighting for those people who had some concerns with the lighting in the park. We've already identified those issues in moving forward to correcting and making sure that works. The way in which the lights, you may or may not know, when you walk in, they turn on, but they only stay on for 2 minutes. And it does go, the one right that you just left goes to black. So you could be, it could be a little unsettling if you're by yourself at night, per se. The other thing, and this is just a question from my perspective, I know when I've done parking, especially online, does your system, if I do it through the QR code, if I say I only want 2 hours, does it alert me that my 2 hours is close to running out and I can okay, great.
It does. 15 minutes before the session ends, you will
It
get a text and or email,
Yes,
and it will let you know that your session is about to expire.
Okay.
Would you like to add more time? If you don't select more time, then your session expires.
And then
You can add 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4
Okay.
hours, 5 hours. You can add whatever you want to add.
I think that's a good benefit too, to let people know.
Absolutely. If you're at dinner and you're not done and you want more parking, sure.
So if I let it lapse, do I get a love letter?
Not anymore. You get a citation. The love letters are done. Yeah.
Councilmember Philippi?
Okay, since we're asking questions on these slides, I'll jump in with a couple of mine. When you had your ambassadors out, did they get any direct feedback from people? Were there any comments back to them as they were talking to people, positive or negative?
I'll be quite frank with you. Yes, we did get feedback. There was no negative feedback.
Oh.
And I'm not just saying that. There was no negative feedback.
Where's
I
the line
told Sharon the other day, we had a meeting. This has been one of the smoothest parking transitions that we have had from pushback, negative feedback. There's been almost none. It's been very seamless. It's been very smooth. It's been great.
Jinx it.
Most people are happy just to be able to find a spot up front, whether it's an hour or 2 hours. And in the paid zone, I didn't get to this slide yet. We'll get to it in a minute. But again, the the average stay in that paid zone is 1 to 2 hours. So I think this is doing what we wanted it to do, was provide parking for people coming to the main area of downtown and be able to find a spot. Those spaces are taken quite a bit, so.
So a follow-up to that then, where do complaints go if anyone has them?
That's a good question.
Well, I mean, other than just the feedback we're getting, I don't know if there's a way for them to.
So, we have a couple decals that are on the pay on foots.
Uh-huh.
Those pay machines that, questions, comments, please reach out to, I think it's, COR parking at 12 Oaks Parking. But there's also a phone number on there. So if someone has a question, I can't figure this out, how do I do this? They can call that number, they can email, someone responds to it within a couple minutes. Our office is right here in downtown Roswell, so if someone wants to come knock on our door and they
Or
can find
Egget.
us, they can come knock on our door. Some complaints are coming to the city of Roswell. And if they do, then direct them to us. Typically they are, but direct them to us.
Councilmember Zach?
Sure? Okay.
Councilmember Hall?
Thank you. Just while we're on the subject, I just wanted to follow what Councilmember Sells was saying, just to make sure I'm clear. So the paid lots, basically, people are still going to the paid lots and paying 10 to 20 or $5 to $20 or whatever it is. Is that what I understood? That?
Correct.
Okay, so, and there's availability on the street and in the parking deck, and they're still choosing to pay for the lot. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, yes, people are choosing to pay at those paid lots. They're also paying for the street spaces. They're also parking in the deck.
Okay,
All the spaces are being used.
okay. All right, thank you.
I do want to say one more thing to answer her question.
Okay, and then Mayor Marshall. Go ahead.
At the deck, on the exit and entry machines, there's wording, there's a button on there that you can press for assistance. So if someone is at the exit or at the entrance and cannot figure out what they're doing or what's going on, or there's something wrong with the equipment, they can push that button. It's a 24/7, 365 answering service that will help them and resolve their problem.
Mayor Robichaud?
And I also want to say, just as comments that I've received also, and this has to do not only with the parking, but Sharon to this and Winters Construction, that the cross-through capability of going from the deck onto Canton Street, most people, except in the torrential rains, have been, pleasantly surprised by it, the way they're keeping it up. So I would hope that that continues through the process that they're doing.
And yes, and just here in the last week and a half, we've gotten into kind of full swing on construction for Green Street, and they are maintaining that crossover for folks, and we expect them to. It is challenging, but they are working it through with the logistics, because that's a really important connection for people, so, yep.
All right, thank you. All right. Please proceed.
Okay. All right, this is some stats from the on-street parking. Again, this is through the 14th. Total visitors, 5,868. Average daily visits, 189. Average turn ratio, 3.7. That turn ratio is how many times those spaces are turning. It doesn't mean each space is being used 3.7 times. It means the average, they're being used 3.7. One space may be used 10 times, another space may be used once, but the average of that area is 3.7 in a day. The total revenue as of the 14th is $23,286. The average daily revenue is $751, and the average ticket $397. So right in that 2-hour range. Citations and warnings, we've issued 754 as of the 14th. Average daily warnings being 23. We're now in citations, but this data is only 2 days of citations. So the average was 18 for 2 days. I do want to give you just a couple that are through the 21st, which would have been this past Sunday. So total visitors on the street is 7,322. and the revenue is 29,208, which I believe the year prior was 27,000 for the entire year. So in a month and a half, well, just a little over a month, actually, it's surpassed that whole year last year. There is data that, and reporting that we are collecting and providing to Sharon. That's coming from, the parking on equipment, which is the pay on foot. It's coming from UBO, which is the scan to pay, the text to pay. Also the TIBA equipment that is over at the deck. We're providing reports to Sharon and Isaac. And that's pretty much it.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Zach?
Thank you. I'm kind of curious broadly, because you have some data to compare us against. Two kind of questions to that. I saw originally, and it would make sense, we have like an upward trajectory of parking as people found out about the deck. And I'm curious, in your experience, do you typically see that level off or dip, or is that pretty consistent? Once you kind of hit your peak, that stays consistent?
It depends. I mean, so in parking, we always tell people we provide the spaces. It's the venue that brings the customers. So it depends on how many people are coming to that deck. So what I would say, what we've seen so far is the deck open and there were a few cars, but now it is starting to go up, like you said. I don't know if it's gonna hit a plateau.
Fair enough.
Hopefully the plateau is that the deck is full and it's full every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning brunch, people going out to lunch, probably going home early Sunday because they got school the next day or work, or hopefully that's the direction we hit. We're building another deck.
Yeah, understood. And I guess in line with that too, and this is probably a loaded question, but I want to ask anyway. Is there any predictability you kind of could have of a success of an area based on parking trends? Is that something that you've been able to look at that data and have some predictability of, we're seeing these shifts based on the parking to know that this is what it's leading to?
I think when you're producing high revenue numbers, that's a good thing. When the deck, in a free deck scenario, I think people visiting it, coming to the deck and having a good experience, and, a lot of people coming to the deck. Again, there's a lot of restaurants. There's some retail stores here. I mean, this is a destination where people come. And when it's a destination, people are gonna fill the parking.
Councilmember Sells?
So two questions. One, following up that, my friend Jeff Leatherman is working on collecting the revenue data from Canton Street and other places. And so we should be able to watch that. And as the deck provides more turn, as we're seeing, and more accessibility, we should see that revenue go up. So I think we can perhaps correlate that. It's not causal. You don't cause revenue, but you facilitate revenue. Revenue causes you, quite frankly. The second thing is, I know you're doing license plate readers. Are we capturing the county per chance?
So we are. And the first.
As data or just as a picture?
Well, there's pictures.
Okay.
I mean, there's LPR.
So we are collecting that data because in particular, what we're trying to understand is, for instance, and you were asking about this, the length of the stay and the fact that we have a fairly significant number of vehicles that are staying a protected period of time, which is telling you that that is probably likely someone who lives adjacent, or perhaps probably more likely they are working in the downtown area. So understanding what that what that load looks like and how that's going to figure into our pricing model is going to be important. How many of these people are going to be repeat customers and perhaps are going to be saying, hey, I'd like to be a monthly parker. What does that look like? And what kind of monthly parking would we establish from a pricing point of view? So we're going to use the data that way. We also want to use the data to understand, and of course Roswell Inc. is interested in this data, is where are these folks coming from? Are we getting folks from outside the county, outside the state, those kinds of things? So we're able to do some sort on the data that way. It's not something we're able to do in the moment. It takes kind of a batching and moving it to a third party and then bringing that back. And I'm going to mispronounce this, but making the data anonymous, if you will, but to give us the ability to understand what the distribution is of where these vehicles are coming from, which will help to inform our economic development strategies, and also will inform our pricing models as opposed to, you know, is this the Mr. and Mrs. Sells coming down from the city of Roswell down for the evening, or is this someone from outside of Roswell or outside of the county, and that kind of thing?
Well, I know we've talked many times about the fact that it's hard to tell if somebody's an actual resident of Roswell, but the county is clearly delineated, so we do know if it's another county. And I don't suppose that's anonymous. That doesn't need to be anonymous.
And in other words, we're going to make it anonymous to the plate, if you will. In other words,
yeah.
the information we're getting back is we have X number of vehicles, and this is how they're traveling. What time of day are they coming? Are they coming on weekends or evenings? One of the things that has been really interesting, and not something we predicted when we were doing our, we did our parking model based on what we thought we understood about parking, is the amount of parking usage that's happening during the day. That we seem to have a real heavy brunch lunch crowd in the city of Roswell, which I don't think we understood. Maybe, it looks like maybe the mayor and Councilmember Brumley understood it, but certainly the data is supporting that. So that actually will help to inform our decisions on how we would make recommendations to you and to Randy about how to price those hours, for instance.
You answered a slightly different question. So you're saying that you're able to track those that are sort of long-term parkers?
Yes.
So have we had people that have left their cars for multiple days, I suppose, as well?
Have we left any overnight?
There are a couple people that are staying overnight. There are a few. It's very small.
Okay.
And that's not atypical for being in an area where or when you're serving alcohol.
Residential.
And somebody says, hey, I'm just gonna leave my car.
There's some,
right? Where there's alcohol involved.
Yeah. I mean, people they may move it from the street to the deck because they feel it's more secure. There's townhomes right there. I don't know. Somebody may be spending the night with their friend.
Yeah, or spending the weekend and they just leave that person's car on the deck for the weekend. And
But that's plate
those kinds of
specific.
things.
That's plate specific. You're talking about a car that's here, and you can track that car over
Well,
the
we
course
have, that's what the license plate readers are doing. So we're able to see that. I mean, for instance, we're able to see that the most frequent visitor to the deck right now is one of our own city vehicles. Well, that makes sense because they're there picking up the trash and doing those things, right?
Yeah.
So we're able to see
The
that.
duration was like 19 minutes, so it's interesting.
Cool, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further questions or comments regarding this item? All right, thank you so much. Good information, thank you.
Everybody.
All right, and then our next item and final item on the committee agendas is a discussion of the 2045 Comprehensive Growth Plan draft presented by Michelle Alexander, the Director of Community Development, and supported by Deputy City Administrator Jeff Leatherman. I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. Good evening. Good evening. A short while ago, all of the elected officials and members of the stakeholder committee for the Comprehensive Growth Plan received a draft document for the comprehensive plan itself. And the purpose for today is to walk through with you some of the comments that we've received to date. We've gotten some great feedback. I want to say I've never seen such engagement at this stage with elected officials. It's so impressive. It's fantastic. I used to do this for a living. I used to write comprehensive plans and master plans and housing studies and things. And I wouldn't get this kind of engagement with the elected officials, and to show how important it is and how serious the words that you're putting down and the policy is just really exciting. It's thrilling. So thank you. I feel very honored to be part of this whole effort that we're working on. Just for a reminder for folks who might be listening that the comprehensive plan is a requirement from the State Department of Community Affairs. It's a document that is an umbrella over several different topics ranging from housing, environmental protection, economic development, land use. And it ties together and puts together the vision for a 20-year planning time period. So we're referring to this plan as the 2045 plan. It also has a 5-year short-term plan within it, a work program that's for 5 years. So while it has a big sweeping vision, it gets very narrow into specifics, and it's the marching orders for staff as we go through putting together our work plans and holding ourselves accountable to our understanding of your policy and the directives that you seek from the plan itself, and for our expectations for a great community. Our plan is a little different than others. We focus very heavily on the economic strategy and looked at a lot of data. You have collected a series of reports, a series of 4 reports that are specific to the industry, real estate, our peer cities, how we compare and stack up competitively in terms of our economic positioning in the region, in the area. As I mentioned, there's a range of topics that are involved. We really focused throughout the planning series on economic strategy, and we looked at several just specific geographic areas. We were calling them activity areas, the small percent of the city that the community has said of over and over in prior comprehensive plans that's where they want to target growth. You don't want to see commercial growth encroaching in on the fabulous neighborhoods that make up this great city. They really want to have it targeted and have commercial growth in just certain areas. So that's what this plan really focused on. We coordinated efforts with transportation, but we didn't, for example, have a meeting dedicated to transportation. We coordinated with the T-SPLOST event so folks who were interested in the long-range planning could take advantage of it. And while transportation is a part of this document, just like housing, just like natural and cultural resources, those weren't the driving topics. So we're seeing themes that are emerging from the comments to date of how do we want to move forward on some of these topics and get more in depth than we have been through this process. So we've had several meetings, several community events, and then we had 6 community meetings, meetings with the stakeholder committee. And the stakeholder committee, I'd just like to, if I may, list through the folks who dedicated so many hours. We have our Councilmember Alan Sales, who served as our chairperson. We have Councilmember Christine Hall. We had Bill Wilkinson, Jay Corona, George Crumley, Deb Ewing, Ward Green, Jeff Jablonski, Denise Rouse, Claire Snedeker. All of these folks met and talked through hours with the consultant. And when we got our draft, not only did they get the draft, they said, let's meet one more time, and added another evening meeting going through and fine-tooth comb, and that's going to be a big piece of the presentation, the results from the stakeholder committee and their comments. So thank you for all the effort and all the work. We have been talking and presenting to you the goal of having a July 13th public hearing. July 13th public hearing is just around the corner. And we haven't actually received comments from all of the elected officials yet. We have from many, but not from all. And we're proposing to you to extend that time period so that we get an opportunity to hear from everybody. We'd also like to include in that, as we receive from you your comments, then we can have follow-up meetings, one-on-one meetings, and so that we can make sure we're answering questions. A lot of the comments we get back are questions and want to have more information, and we want to make sure we satisfy that. And we're thrilled about the taking over and mastering what's inside the document. So what we were looking forward then is extending to have final written comments to us by July 2nd, right before the holiday. And that would give us time to consolidate all of the information, so then we could take time out to meet with all of you, show you some of the emerging themes and some of the direction about the recommendations of the final changes that look like is what the consensus is emerging from all of the folks, all of you that are preparing and submitting comments. So I wanted to share that. We haven't talked through it in that way as a process, and I wanted to make sure that that works for all of you, that we get buy-in on that approach. So that would change or shift our schedule a little bit. Instead of having a public hearing already, we would have another committee. We'd come back to you at this committee meeting, and we would have a document. You'd have a tool where you can look at what are the potential recommended changes based on what we have been discussing together in this room, in your 3-on-3s, and then also individually with the staff, who I'm playing the role of scribe of sewing together everything we're hearing. And then that would give us time to get back to the consultants and turn around, so that we'll shift then to 2 weeks later, the public hearing, which is when the document gets transmitted to the state. Now, it's not going for adoption on that evening, but it's getting transmitted to the state. They make sure that we did our job right and that we followed all the rules. And so they take a little time to review it. And again, just a reminder, our latest adoption date, so we are looking to adopt by the end of September, have it back from the state and from the Atlanta Regional Commission.
Let me, if I may, in my past life, as a planning director, I do want to highlight the transmittal date of July 27th. That is the point at which everything does need to be in order and finalized to be able to send to the state for DCA and ARC, Atlanta Regional Commission, Department of Community Affairs review. They will take a look at it. They will review the comprehensive plan submittal, and they may provide some technical comments that may need further documentation from the staff and or the consulting team. But that must then be adopted by the end of the year. You have October 31st as the latest point of the date of adoption. I don't want to have anybody have the impression that it's then opened up again for a full-scale commentary and input on the plan. The transmittal date, in this sense, is the most significant date because the plan needs to be in its final form. And so anything that the state comments, we'll work with the staff to be able to address those comments, but that does not mean that the entirety of the plan opens up, because if you do that, you're then on a totally different scale or timeline, and you could miss the deadline and so forth. So I just want to highlight that now, that the transmittal date on the 27th is quite significant. Thank you. Sorry, if you were going to cover that, I apologize.
Thank you. No, thank you. It's helpful for emphasis. So I'm going to walk through the stakeholder committee comments. What you have passed out in your packet is the summary of 6 topics that are considered for editing and for changing. But that's just the surface, or just one element of the entire packet that you received about a week ago. It's a little bit over a week ago now, that we got from the stakeholder committee, which was a thorough examination of the document, as well as the economic strategy that was adopted in 2024.
When you sent that out, was that after they'd gotten together and edited it, or was that before?
Before. It was around like the same time that everyone.
They got together and edited it, and email exchange, several of them at way back in, so there's a little more recent.
I see, I see.
Yeah, and that's the one I think that's what I think these are. You summarized this from.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that when the stakeholder committee got together as a group, yes, there have been additional comments that have trickled in since the compilation of this document, which was a bit of a formal submittal, just looking at the amount of work that went into it. Another document that was associated with it was a document just looking at the community work program. And the community work program, that's that 5-year action item list. That's the action, that's the implementation. So the committee did work on both sides of the document. And I was going to walk through and summarize, but obviously members of the committee will correct me or keep me where I need to be. But I thought it was helpful to let everyone know that the committee took into account the overall comprehensive plan and essentially asked the question, what would the good comp plan look like? What would it achieve? And so they evaluated the overall outcomes based on 7 metrics. One related to the quality of life, one about how well does it talk about the neighborhood protection, how well does it treat transitions, how about handling multifamily, especially in the mixed use, what about our population growth, and what about workforce housing, the definition, and then what about traffic impacts and how to manage. And all of that was gleaned from reviewing the community survey. So the results, thematics, the major thematics that emerged from the survey is what the committee, you all as the committee used to say, well, this is what was cared about, this is what people most seem to care about, how does the comp plan respond to it? So there's quite more documentation to this, but as a shorthand, the first priority related to traffic impact analysis is that saying that we need to make sure and put as a matter of policy that anything that's coming into these areas in our activity centers, we need to assure and be clear that it's a matter of policy. So currently, it's also part of our regulations. When a project comes in, and if it's going to generate 100 new trips during the AM or the PM peak hours, they're required to, according to code. But this is a slightly different nuance in saying, look at what the policy is. We're committing to this, and we don't want this to be taken for granted. This is in the code, and this is the will of the elected body, that we are taking seriously the impacts of any traffic and any new projects coming into the activity centers that we've been talking about. Another concern came up regarding mixed use, and when it says mixed use sequencing, it refers to making sure that if we are going to say, as the activity centers currently say, that's where we want new residential to go, if and only if it's mixed use. There's no desire, there's not an appetite to have any standalone multifamily. And it doesn't say that explicitly currently in the draft. So this was something the committee identified, that we want to make sure we put into the language that it's explicitly mixed use if we're going to allow a variety of residential types. Did I capture that, sir? It is in the code for, yes, the 50%, the 51%. You're right. It is in the code, and that is something to also consider looking at. Well, sorry, excuse me, I apologize. Yes, it's already in the code as the 51% for the specific district of CX. The mixed-use district required. Mixed-use
I
district.
think you'll be pleased to know, I think what the steering committee was trying to do was to move away from the bottom floor must be, right? And talking about an area, so a character area, an activity area, and saying that. Exactly, because that was really ham-handed. I think you would agree.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, okay.
And maybe I just add a second piece of that. I think part of the evaluation that we were looking at, and Hill Street is a great example, that if you look at the Hill Street project in its totality versus building by building, the policy can help us tackle kind of what's the philosophical approach, and then we figure out, okay, well, we may need to have some code protections in place, but then as we start to evaluate individual projects, the policy gives us some flexibility to bring that to council to say, well, your code has some limitations, but we may be requesting a variance in this way because the policies want to drive some flexibility in what we're trying to accomplish overall.
The developments don't exist in a vacuum. essentially.
Correct.
Okay.
Within the activity centers, they're drawn so that there's a core area and then a transitional area. So there's a darker color in a specific activity center, and then there's the lighter color. And the way the language currently talks about it is that that transitional area, the lighter color area, the transitional sub-area will provide a gradual shift in scale and character, reflecting patterns similar to nearby existing areas. And it was really intending to say within the boundaries, you need to be already tapering off from an intense use in the center core. From there, we need to taper off and have less intensity so that you're compatible then with the surrounding neighborhoods. And that was, I'm bringing that up because a question that, or a priority that came up with the team on the stakeholder group was that the transition zoning areas, these transition areas weren't really very well defined, and there was a concern that it needs to be much better defined. And so what does it mean to have a transition area in terms of very specific design standards and to have a reference in these design standards and have reference of these transitions in the policy itself?
Councilmember Brumlett?
So I didn't think that this plan was going to the level of detail to get to specific design standards for certain areas. I mean, I thought this plan is to give us kind of direction, or not that we're tying ourselves to make sure that it's only 30, you know, the policy says it's going to be 30 feet in this area. Because it sounds to me like we are creating like a UDC zone using this, if we start documenting this kind of level of detail.
Councilmember Marcel?
Yeah, I don't know that, well, so what, we moved that to a CWP, correct?
Yeah, to moving.
So there are these, you may know this, but the CWPs are where the work gets done, and
The
we're
work
saying
program.
that we need some definition around transition. It needs to be inside the area so that because if you think outside of that box, I mean, it's already residential. So you can't transition where the residential already is. It's got to transition from within. So your most intense is farther away from the residential. And as you move towards it, does the height come down? There are things that I'm sure that the pros who do this can talk about. And it's sort of area specific. Like Kimberly Clark, if you think to its right is Big Creek Park, right? So we're trying not to define it per se in these areas, but rather to say that the CWP needs to undertake over the next few years to say, what do we want in transition so we can explain it clearly when a project is being considered.
So adding it as an action item to the work program to define these transitions better for each activity center. Not to, in this code, right, it's 30 feet, it's 40 feet.
Because that's what it says, that our policy establishing the minimum
Yes.
standards. So it
Yes.
says there that we're about to put that in the work.
What it says that to add that to the CWPs, which are the community work program or projects. So those are the actions that are taken after. That's what we're saying, add it to that, because that's part of, in this document, the back section of the CWPs. And so those are the things that are part of this, and we're saying what it needs to assign to staff over the next 5 years for council's review is, hey, we need to talk about what a transition actually means.
And this is very helpful for staff. Then we read the statement and now we're getting the clarification that this, where it's intended and that it's not intended to come up with those standards there, but that it's marching orders, staff, figure this out. we need something in each of these transition areas. Is that better? Okay.
Councilmember Brumley, does that clarify?
No, I mean, it does say they're out of policy, it doesn't say out of work, work plans. Yeah, it's a community work.
We can refine the final version of the recommended edits or recommended changes so that it clarifies what we're gathering from
Specific
you
edit
all.
was to the CWP, if I recall.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe if I could just
Maybe that's
clarify
not what
really
this
quick,
says.
is
Yeah, that's where I'm
that,
confused.
that this priority statement was in advance of the final meeting with the stakeholder group. And we resolved this by recommending an update to the community work program so that we weren't trying to write policy, to your point. We weren't trying to write the buffers into the comp plan. Too complicated, not the right location, but recognizing that there is a conflict and an issue that we need more clarity on. And so moving that into the work program so that as we're going through code updates, it would inform code. And so that's how we resolved this issue. And I would agree, it looks like it's drafting a policy statement for the comp plan as it's written up here on the screen. But we didn't want to go through that process of trying to define individual buffers and individual work plans, because that would have been much too difficult.
All right. Mayor Robichaud.
I think this just needs clarification, because it does say add a policy and a UDC implementation note that that's number 2. It says add, every one of them says adding a policy versus, and nowhere in the top does it say it's for the portion
Work
of it.
program.
So when you
Community
read
work
this,
Yes.
Yeah.
it does give that perspective. And if the title just would state where these are going, I understand the work plan. I've gone through that concept of where that is. But when you read this, it's not 100% clear to us.
Understood. And that's why we added the second committee meeting here in this room
Right,
in 2
right.
weeks so that we could get that abundance of clarity of exactly what is going to be changed,
Yes.
list by list, so that you all can see that, so there wasn't any confusion.
This alone, add language to the economic development policy section to develop proposal. I mean, it's talking,
Yeah, specify
from my
minimum
perspective, it talks about the plan in its entirety without being page specific, so it didn't give direction that you're speaking only of this portion of the plan
Right.
versus this portion. So that might be where
And thank you. And as a scribe, I do have a companion piece which has the page numbers for each of the areas, and we're just still consolidating. So I didn't mean to cause confusion with leaving that out, but yes, it's having the page numbers is the only way I'll be able to keep sanity and make sure that we have.
Councilmember Zach.
Jeff, I think you did a very good job of giving an example for number 2, and I'm trying to wrap my head in a similar way for number 3 of, like, how would that be approached? Like, we would have a development, a general development, like, how would we put the language in that as we get further away from the center, we could control things?
Yeah, there's really a couple of different ways that we would tackle it, and I'll take the first stab, and then Michelle can chime in, is really what you start to write is you write character area specific plans. And so you take the details around, right now what you see is 400 and the corridor there, and you start to get more detailed in what kind of housing you would allow, really in a master planning effort. We had a very similar master plan, probably in 2002, 2003, around the MIMS property at Holcomb Bridge Road and Highway 9 that started to master plan that property out. And you start to show how the plan would stair step down from either a height or a density perspective as a representative example of the buffers and the transition areas that you're putting in place. And that's one strategy that we can use. You can also start to physically write it into code through the zoning maps as well. That gets a lot more detailed because now you're going parcel by parcel, which makes it significantly more complicated in especially a project area of that size. So those are really the two strategies, and then Michelle, any others that you would
And
add?
just currently, we do have some of these transitions in height, for example. The Unified Development Code does require transitions in height and measuring the height of one building if you are adjacent, both the distance and the height, if you are adjacent to residential, if a commercial building is next to residential. So we have some of those tools in the zoning, but on that generalized area, not specific to an activity-centered geography.
And I guess to summarize, which I think I figured out through both your guys' response, which I appreciate, is you're controlling basically the borders and its proximity, not to the center, but to the outside. That makes more sense. Thank you.
Well, and to that point, we do need to we will be discussing what is the appropriate uses that are in the core versus what are the appropriate uses in the transition. And right now, the plan identifies with language to describe it, and then it gives a list of the type of uses that are preferred or priority or in the transition area. It needs to be more specific. Right now, we have a set of photos, but we don't have a comprehensive list of what's transitional and what's core. That is, you don't want single-family residential in the core. You don't want to use up your prime real estate and dedicate it to single-family detached in the core. You want to make sure you have that as you're transitioning and moving away from intense uses to our neighborhoods. So right now, there was a reference in the policy that talks about incentives for workforce housing without actually defining what that means. And so the stakeholder committee struggled with that and looked at ways to handle that. If it's going to be an incentive, then either let's not have it as an incentive because we're not sure what we're defining, or letter B there, replace it with defined language specifying income range. So to explain, to actually define, what is it we do mean by workforce? How do we quantify that, and who is that trying to capture and support? And so there was the looking at that, and this was another conversation that moved from, we identify housing in needs and opportunities, we identify housing in the policy, and then in the work program, we only have two items in the work program. And one item says, let's study this. We don't actually have enough data to know what is the problem we're solving for. Let's study this with detail. And also, we've got feedback with specific actionable outcomes of execute a strategy or prepare a strategy. We don't currently have that language right now. So that was a big conversation with the stakeholder committee to say, we're bringing this up and let's define it and let's really put some meat into what we're going to do for that, the study that needs to be done. And given the discussion so far and the number of comments related to that, it seems like a pretty ripe study to consider for next year's budget. I'm thinking on how this comprehensive plan really worked and spent a lot of resources. We looked at the economic and the real estate and the commercial and how are we going to grow our economy without growing our population. And we didn't go and do a deep dive into housing. It was not part of this scope, wasn't that intense. So that seems to be an outcome that's emerging from all the comments.
Councilmember Sells?
We didn't discuss housing outside of these activity areas. So to the extent that mixed use includes housing, of course, it's still a part.
Yes.
From that perspective, what we didn't deal with is the neighborhood areas, because that was really the focus of the last comp plan. And so we were really focused on the economic areas. And frankly, virtually all the conversation was about those five, which
Yes,
are,
sir.
as we know, that's a subset of the 14% of our geography that's commercial. So that might be 5%. That's what that we focused on.
Yeah. Thank you. This came up in other comments as well, not just from the stakeholders. The economic development strategy had that 120,000 target, not target, but had a ceiling of what our population might grow to become and what was a reasonable growth. And the comment that came back was that really it's going to be a little bit more appropriate to talk about having modest growth. Residents prefer modest growth, not growth for its own sake. So really, the marching orders from the recommendation from the stakeholders was really define the growth in terms of economic growth, emphasize that explicitly, because that's not written out as an explicit sentence currently in the draft. And then to not necessarily have a target, but to talk about trying to prefer modest growth.
Also, my recollection reading it, also there was a consideration when we talked population growth, also about the age distribution of that population growth needs to, I mean, I have that in my comments.
Yes.
Concept, you know, and the comp plan did focus on that a lot as we're looking at even that economic growth also is going to be dependent, you know, my age, I'm not going to be working. Well, I am, you know, but I mean, I'm 70, so I mean, I'm on that other end. But that's where even in the data that was shown, that's our largest, you know, population right now, where we want to be looking at opportunities to make it where you can live, work, and play here. You know, I can live and play here, you know, concepts, but looking. So I think we need to add not just the concept of a you know, modest slash, I use the word measured growth. I mean, we use the same kind of words, but with making sure if we're doing a study or in the work plan, focusing also bringing in the concepts of the age distribution, because, you know, I think that's going to be important too.
Yeah, it has major implications of what we can do with our economy. Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, and our schools, you know, and the other things that drive people here, our schools. I mean, I'm not going to have children going to school anymore, so, but those concepts as we.
Councilmember Beeson and then Zach.
Within that same vein, and that was some of the feedback that I just sent you today. So, surprise, spoiler alert. To me, this is a conflicting recommendation in the sense that on one hand, we're saying that we're not focusing on growing the population, and I realize it's not the primary focus, but we're rather focusing on employer quality, tax-based diversification. Essentially, economic development and housing development go hand in hand. We cannot, as a city, recruit top-level employers if they don't have anyone to work for them. As Mayor Robichaud pointed out, based off of the demographics and the initial draft of the comprehensive plan, we've actually gone down in terms of population over the last several years. However, our population of 65 and up residents has increased. I don't know a single Fortune 500 company that's like, man, where are the retirees at? Because that's where we need to go. They want workforce. And I understand that based off the last feedback, we don't want to necessarily paint with too wide of a brush with whatever workforce housing is, but we do need to be able to recruit not only employers, but the employees. I think that begs a larger question for people who are of my age demographic. We have a brain drain in Roswell because we have excellent school systems. We have not only public schools, we have private schools. Where are those kids going once they graduate college? They're not coming back based off our demography. It shows that they're leaving. Are they not coming back because they can't afford it? Are they not coming back because the amenities aren't here based off where they want to have a good quality of life? Are the employers not here what they want? I would also say based off of my generation, compared to my parents' generation, my mother used to commute one way to work, an hour and a half, no questions asked, in Atlanta. Anybody my age is going to be, commute? What? Remote work, you mean? If we don't have the type of jobs that support the type of quality of life that people within that age demographic are looking for, or what kind of life they want for their families, we're not going to be able to recruit the workforce that is going to support the employers, that is going to support the economic development that we're looking for. It is a pyramid system, and I think that we're focusing on one part of the pyramid, which is the top, and not the base.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, we do need the jobs. So there's this incredible statistic that came through this data, and that is Roswell has 1.29 jobs for every household. 1.29. Alpharetta has 3.4 jobs per household. So we do need jobs that fit, frankly, the demographics that we have here. We got a highly educated, $100,000 to $150,000 household income kind of job. Those are the kinds of jobs that we should be focused on. And that's sort of where we're coming from as far as like the economic development piece is concerned. We really need to focus on jobs that attract people, that people here would take. And then these houses, quite frankly, we're the lowest, as you know, the lowest cost housing in all of North Fulton is right here in Roswell. So,
Councilmember Zach, then Mayor Rowe, and then Councilmember Philippi, I think. Councilmember Zach.
It's more of a conceptual question out of curiosity. With the baseline of head count, and I know it's kind of going away for this example, but is there kind of a community development strategy on using actual head count in households versus parcel for recognizing growth? Because I could see arguments in either way.
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
I don't know if I quite understand. What do you mean by household versus parcel?
Yeah, like, so the population of 120,000 was the previous target, which, that's the tree. And the forest I'm trying to get to is like, that's a metric to measure off of, right? So, but you could also measure on how many parcels you have, which doesn't include the number of members in the household. And especially as conversations on ADUs come up and stuff like that, I'm kind of curious from a conceptual standpoint, is there a basis of head count versus parcel and kind of driving and a reason behind that?
You're talking about like a residentially zoned parcel?
Yeah.
It's difficult to draw any significant correlation because residential lots are going to be a variety of sizes. And so it makes it really difficult that, you've got one house on a half acre, but you could also have 3 houses on a half acre. And so it just makes it difficult that, the more, I would say, dense your housing stock is on single family residential, meaning the more units you allow per acre is going to drive your population higher. So it depends on your lot size, and what you allow is really going to drive, and you would measure that on a per acre basis. Essentially, how many units do you allow on an acre?
And I don't have a strong argument, it's more of curiosity, but I guess to give a counterexample, like a growth of a family would change that measurement. So like, and again, we're going away with the 120, but I'm kind of curious if the 120 could or would have been achievable with zero development, but with the changing of demographic and population. And again, this is like a conceptual thing. I don't really need a hard answer. I'm just curious if
I see what you're saying.
I see. Yeah.
There goes to my question. It's the same question that I was asking you guys about the inventory of housing that we had. So when we first met, right? And it was like, okay, what housing inventory do we have? How much do we need to meet this population growth? And then what kind of demand for housing does that create? Like, what is the complexion of that housing?
Yep. And there are some numbers. I'll put together a snapshot. So we took out for each of the activity centers, there was some demand studies done, the demand of residential for the real estate side of it for each of the activity centers. And we can excerpt from that and say, hey, in a scenario, the minimum, if this the build out scenario of what this would look like, how many new housing units would that be? And then the method is 2.2 people per household here in Roswell. So I would have a dwelling units because of the demand, and then I would do a population. So there's some math that can be done to have scenarios. And I wouldn't do it as a end all. I would do it as a minimum, medium, maximum. These are potential. It all depends on choices that are made and the economy and all that kind of, But we can prepare something like that. It sounds like there's an interest.
I wouldn't say there's necessarily one, but I think, and I'm kind of using a target that seems like everyone's recommending goes away, but it's interesting from my perspective, if that target were to stay, and the approach was, and it sounds like it, to shift more the age demographics that we're seeing, that should lead to there's more children in the household, which is showing a growth of population, but not a growth of development.
Right.
So, I don't know, just a conceptual thing.
I see, yep.
Yeah, and I would say there's a couple of as assuming that the housing component of the work plan moves forward as recommended, which will be recommended by staff. This is the conversation that we want to be able to dive into of what data do we want to be looking at on an annualized basis, on a regular basis to drive some of our housing policies moving forward so that we can really do a deep dive into, okay, what are we looking at from a data perspective, just like we've done on the economic development side. I would also say that for us on the economic development success factor, what Councilmember Sells was talking about of this job creation evaluation. Daryl and I have started to have some conversations of what are the other metrics that we should be looking at on an economic development perspective that starts to look at, okay, how are we measuring success? Because it's not necessarily just population growth. It could be job growth. It could also be household income. It could be a whole number of factors that we should be tracking on a micro level on an annualized basis that starts to show some of the early indicators of are we being successful in our strategy implementation or are we not? So that's another piece of the puzzle that we're working through as an outcome of this.
Yeah, and kind of last thought to that, and I think it's a fair point, because as we continue to go down these paths on metrics, measure the success of our decisions, I do think it is important that it could be referenced of, is our population growing, therefore, oh, we're having too much development, when the reality is, if we get into the details, it's like, no, we're having a shifting, and we're having more kids, which was ultimately, I think, kind of the goal of the whole audit.
Yeah.
Mayor Robichaux?
And I guess I just wanted to echo Councilmember Beeson's concept, because again, in the document, if we know that healthcare is the largest employer in the city of Roswell, but less than 10% of those workers live in Roswell. That's the concept when we talk, whatever you want to call it, workforce, housing, workforce. And if you think about less than 10%, we're not just talking the lower level care providers. We're talking from physicians, the CEOs, the administrators. I know what I made in healthcare, but I'm concept. So I think when we think about that, if less than 10% of our largest employer, which can also is an industry that is growing and will grow, live here, we do need to obviously consider that housing as we move forward.
Councilmember Philippi?
And then Jeff, just to your point in regards to what kind of things do we want to discuss with housing and what kind of things do we want to evaluate, how do we look at trends for what type of housing is desired for the type of demographic we're trying to attract, right? So if we're doing a bunch of mixed use, is it apartments or condos that are really going to attract that demographic, or do we need some smaller lot size, cottage style homes, different kinds of things?
Yeah, and I think I would point to everybody back, the economic development, for economic development reports that we had, the big, aha moment that everybody knows is if you just let the market do what the market would want to do, they would put housing in every single one of our commercial corridors as dense as we would allow it, because housing continues to be a struggle in the metropolitan area. What that doesn't factor in is how does that change your tax base and how does that change your quality of life? And so similar to the work that we've done in the industry and sector analysis on the economic development side of this comp plan, the housing study would be written to define exactly what you're talking about. What is the demand-based housing strategy for Metro Atlanta? What is the market telling us? The market will likely tell us density is going to be as high as we let them build it, they will build it. How then do we define what is the quality of life, and also what are we trying to attract? Because those are two different animals. If we're trying to attract, as the mayor just pointed out, healthcare, medical care, those style of workers, we want to go to those industries and also say, okay, based on the demographics that you're recruiting, what are you looking for? What are your employees looking for? And then how do we work that into our housing policies? And so there'll be multiple ways that we look at, okay, what's just the pure market demand, but then what's our economic development strategy for the workforce that we're trying to attract? How do we marry that in the middle with the right policies that the council feels comfortable with that still supports the quality of life that we have? Which is why we're recommending bringing that forward as a standalone study so that we can really dive into how do we tackle that from a data evaluation and then a policy perspective.
Councilmember Brumley.
I also want to make the point that these documents seem to be very binary, either single-family houses or multi-mega apartment complexes. And we need to start
going with the times and acknowledge that there are other things, which I have pretty pictures of, if anybody is interested in, about the different types of housing that we can have. For example, yeah, this is a duplex. Would you believe that? It looks like a single family house, right? This is, let me see. Look at this triplex. It's very reasonable and in keeping with the designs of other houses in our community. The fact that we can't have them right now is just, again, getting with the times. Here's these ones are a little bit more dense. This is an 8-unit apartment, looks like a house from outside, see? So I would love to have some of the examples of this if we think that this would be something that it's, would be amenable for new people to come in, because not everybody wants an apartment, but not everybody wants a single house. Like, I hate cutting my grass. I can't even do that. So, so if my other choice is just going into apartment, I also don't want that, right? But, and especially something that is very near to me is that multiple generations living under one roof. Which is how I grew up, right? Having the grandparents, the parents, and the kid in one roof, which, sometimes it's easier if we have like an addition or a building like this where everybody has their own privacy, but they all are connected together. So that's kind of, I believe, if you see at the community, in the last section when we have the feedback, so, and the community online feedback, and then the couple of the sessions were here, those were things that were brought up by the public as well, so, yeah.
Councilmember Sells?
Going back to some of the metrics that we were talking about earlier, Jeff, I know it's true in many of the neighborhoods. Our housing stock, I think the average is something like 45 years. It's pretty high. But at the same time, an awful lot of it is being renovated. So you can't drive through Horseshoe Bend without finding somebody who's taken a split level or worse, one of those 70s, modular weird things, and turned it into something else. So there's a fair amount of that. So I think maybe as we think about population growth, to his point, Chris's point, that we can know that. We can know that there's a major renovation, that we know how many, I suppose we would know or be able to track how many bedrooms they have and things like that. So that would be part of, as we think about this whole issue, what we're talking about here is defining what the need is. Mm-hmm. And back to 3.3 jobs versus 1.29 jobs, okay? We don't have jobs. People are commuting out of Roswell to go to work to Alpharetta. We are the bedroom community for Alpharetta. That's what this means. We're the workforce housing. Yeah, we're the workforce housing for Alpharetta. That's what we are, and maybe that's your vision, but it's not mine. I would like to ask if, so those pictures, 8 units, would you see that in a single-family neighborhood?
Some of the sizes of the lots, yes.
So you would see that in a single-family neighborhood?
It looks like a McMansion, and we have those right now.
Okay, just want to make sure, because the data is incredibly clear on this from every survey we have. Every survey has said protecting the residential neighborhoods is the most important thing, and in particular, they don't want multifamily in the residential single-family neighborhoods that we have. So I hear that that's what you want, but I'm just telling you that some 65 to 70% of the population says they do not.
You have to remember that some of that data is people who live in HOAs, who have their own rules, so it wouldn't be applicable to those neighborhoods.
That sounds terribly elitist, but whatever.
Councilmember Zach?
This is kind of, again, a conceptual thing. That I had a conversation today earlier where part of the conversation was about how, and I'm sure you've heard this a million times, people who live in this community are in houses that they couldn't afford and their family has left and they're looking to downsize. And I don't know if this argument was made to me, but it kind of made sense as they gave that dotted line of if there was housing available that was cheaper for someone who was trying to retire in the community who's been here their whole life, is there any kind of evidence or data of like, is there a transitional cycle that if housing opened up for that it would likely get replaced by the younger family that the younger workforce that we're attracting? And I'm not sure. So that's kind of like my broad question.
Tackle it from just a data perspective, and I can give you my general opinion.
Yeah, I don't have data that tracks what you're describing. It would have to be geographically specific to understand the dynamic of the market and who the market profile is to track that. But now you got me curious to look it up.
Yeah, and I will answer it not from a data perspective, but more anecdotally from an observation is, as I talk to neighbors and people transitioning where their kids are moving out, we've got college age kids, the conversation continues to be, well, how do I find the ranch house that is single story so that I don't have to deal with stairs, and that is my transition plan. The challenge that we have within Roswell is we really don't have that middle grade housing style. Regardless of the price point, we really just don't have that style that is less maintenance from a yard perspective. Saddle Creek is a great example. A lot of ranch style homes in Saddle Creek, but you're on a half acre, or larger, and now you're cutting grass or you're paying to maintain a lot of property that you frankly don't want to have anything to do with in your 60s and 70s. But you are here because your community is here, your church is here, your Bible study is close by, all of your doctors are here, and so there's that desire to stay within community, that quality of life question. But there isn't the transitional place for where am I going to move? And because that housing stock is so limited right now, it drives the price point up, that they're very desirable, they're in places that are walkable. And so as we think through the mixed use concept of all of our activity centers, it does have policies around diversifying small lot residential. In the downtown area, we have policies around small lot residential that is similar to townhomes, but potentially detached where there's not a lot of common space. So we've started to move in that direction, but I think, again, the housing and the housing study will help us refine what are we really looking for. And it's not just the younger population, as you described, it's also our aging population that is looking for that transitional housing piece. And we've got to find the right, because frankly, I want them to stay. I want them to age in our community and be part of that multi-generational community. What's that? They are, and they're enjoying it. Yeah.
Councilmember Beeson? I'm sorry, Councilmember Zach, were you, another comment?
No, I guess it's just kind of add on. I think that does drive to the value of the housing study, because to your point, if you figure out you're solving for X and the data does show that like that downsizing effort leads to the population shift, then it solves two problems in a very significant way. So very, very curious.
Councilmember Beeson, then Councilmember Hall. I'm sorry, Mayor Roche.
Not specific to Roswell. There are several housing studies that I'm familiar with that speak to what you're talking about, which is if you're adding to the housing supply in a smaller sized house that allows for someone to downsize without losing a quality of life. So as opposed to using a dichotomous approach, which we've pretty much been talking about so far, which is very large estate style house or apartments in a large garden style apartment development, the missing middle that we're having here, here in Roswell specifically, in the post-World War II housing boom, there were starter homes that came out. That was really when you started having subdivisions start, and those were, for the most part, 3-2 homes. They're not overly large, they're typically ranch, and a lot of people aged in place. You think of that, you think of grandma's house, right? And because people's grandma, were able to stay there. Here in Roswell, those types of housing, for the most part, are on half-acre, 1-acre properties. As you start to look at properties and the prices go up, I will give you a perfect example. There is one of these 3-2s that was made in the 1960s. It is currently maybe half a mile from Canton Street. It is $890,000 because it's the price of the property that it sits on, not so much the square footage of the house. To Councilmember Brumley's point, there is a way that you can subdivide these larger parcels, 1 acre, half acre, and subdivide them into quarter acres, 1/8 of an acre, and put these 3-2 homes on them that are ranch style, that are 0 level entry, that not only can you age in, but also that could be your first house. It serves 2 different levels of a population. That was what the housing boom originally addressed, that we're tapering off here in Roswell because the cost of land is very expensive. And also our code precludes people from being able to subdivide that land to make it more affordable to develop individual housing.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. One thing that was very, very clear in the surveys that came back that's available to everybody and all the feedback were that the residents did not, basically, they don't want you to mess with their residential areas. And what we have is, we do have, well, duplexes are available. We have duplexes available. And we introduced in the last comp plan, what was that residential type, the activity?
Active
Active
residential.
Active residential, which allows for the smaller lot sizes. They are 6 and down to 4 maybe, and different. So basically, that is available in the residential. And just if you're talking about plopping an 8-plex down, just because like in just on Stroop Road or something like that, or where Hollyberry is, they don't have an HOA, you're going to have 20 cars, 2.5 cars per household. I mean, that's a big change to the residential areas, and our residents are clear now. But they were also clear that the density in these activity centers that we've been talking about, that's where we're looking at more, where we can accommodate more density. And there are a variety types of housing that we can look at the activity centers. So a lot of it, which is already available, the cottage courts, and we do have the smaller lot sizes. So just, for the folks that may not be aware, I just wanted to put that out there.
Mayor Robichaux?
And this is just not so much about housing appropriateness, but, and I think Jeff and I talked about this earlier, just in some of the demographics perspective, especially in the concept of percentage household expenditures. I would love to see a breakout. I'm assuming we have the data of those households that their housing expense is not, i.e., such as myself, I don't have a mortgage. So I don't have 30% of my income is not going toward my housing. I think, and again, especially because of the age of our population, I do think you're going to find that is that could also drive, that would also mean my income, would have a higher percentage of capability of spending on entertainment and recreation concepts. So just so we understand that, as we go forward with policies and developing any of the economic, even in those activity centers, not only what's going to bring in, younger families, whatever, but also what's going to have my demographic go out and spend the amount of disposable income some will have. I think that could vary. That could also, just as moving forward, I'm not sure that goes into the comp plan, but these are some of the concepts to, a little bit more data. I'm sure they probably have it somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Councilmember Zach?
This doesn't need to happen today. I think we're going long on a lot of small things, but I've kind of heard from the community strongly, two sides say that we were banning duplexes and completely, and others that say we allow it. Jeff or Michelle, at some point we have just something that gives clarity in a committee meeting of what's allowed and where, because I've heard arguments on both sides, and I think that clarity would help.
Okay. Not off the top, I don't. I can do a partial answer on some of the zoning, but the small lot, the R4s and R6 where they're not allowed, and what character areas, but I can't answer where the duplex.
The question was specific to duplexes. We'll make sure we get clarity for you.
Yes, sir.
Yep. Okay, I'm sorry.
All right. So then the fifth item that came up, which was related to economic development policies. And essentially, it's a recommendation to establish some criteria that when you have a development proposal in the activity centers, let's evaluate them for what they contribute to quality of life, things like job quality, wage levels, commercial tax revenue, et cetera. So this was a recommendation to specifically add depth to the development activity in the activity centers and establish at a policy level anyway. So that gives direction to your economic development director as, more specific criteria for specific projects come through. You have something in the policy that says, hey, if you're gonna come here, this is what we're gonna evaluate you based on.
Yes, Councilmember Sells?
Jeff, why don't you talk just a second about, because you've been trying to bring this into the economic development assessment, and it's always been a placeholder. So, it seemed like the committee really picked up on that conversation and wanted to make sure that as we look at opportunities, quality of life had some standard of measure, some concept that we could say this project is a plus and this project is a C from a quality of life standpoint. Can you talk a little bit about how you're doing that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I think I'll use just job quality, wage levels, commercial tax revenue. Some of those are easy to get at. The commercial tax revenue, is really just a math equation. And you saw that a little bit of that last night from Bowen and 92 of, okay, how many construction jobs are we creating with this project? How many permanent jobs do we create with the project? But the job creation should, as part of our evaluation in these activity areas, take it one step further, is if we're driving a market economy and our comp plan has identified areas where we want to target job growth and sectors that we want to target that in, well, our evaluation should also capture that same information. And we may be willing to give and take from a policy perspective based on what jobs are being created and the job types that are being created. And there may be a desire for the council to be more flexible in the types of policies that we consider based on the results associated with that analysis, or potentially less flexible. If it's a A-level kind of job creation from a comp plan perspective, we might be more flexible with some of our housing related policies or others that we would allow from a density perspective versus a C or a D or an F level type job creation evaluation that the council may not be as excited about, and so would want to stick with a more rigid policy evaluation related to both our UDC and our comp plan, meaning you wouldn't give as many incentives for that type of project. And so I think Councilmember Zach also brings just another component of that when we think about quality of life is are we creating housing stock, and does the project create housing stock for younger families? And that goes into kind of how are we evaluating the quality of life that we're creating, the longevity that we create within our community. And so our economic development evaluation should start to include all of those items, not just an up or down vote on does it create tax revenue, does it create sales tax revenue, how do we become more nuanced in our evaluation as it relates to quality of life. And kind of the easy one goes to, well, does it create parks or does it create some sort of natural environment? Well, our commercial corridors really are not intended to create those things. That's not the purpose. Their purpose is, do they create destinations for people to want to live and stay and work in our community? And so how do we evaluate that? And these policies would help drive that from a policy level perspective and from an evaluation perspective. We were just kind of giving various examples, but, commercial development that potentially creates, I'll say, warehouse level jobs would have a lower quality of life type score because of the job that it's creating. Whereas, an office complex that is medical related, supporting our hospital and medical and research, may have a much higher quality of life creation because of the job types that it's creating across that spectrum. And so, while not fully vetted, that's the thinking that this policy level causes us to start to calculate. And the comp plan gives us the metrics in which we would need to start to look at. And that we would be doing on an annual basis and reporting that back on an annual basis to the council. And what we're looking for is, are we seeing incremental wins on every little project? Every project that we have to have that scorecard associated with it because we've got 18% of the property we're working with.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councilmember Philippi?
I would just point out that, if we are desiring more of these healthcare jobs and whatever jobs not, every job available at those institutes is going to be of quality, right? So I would think that we would want to be a welcoming community to all levels of jobs that these businesses require.
Thank you. All right, any further Please go ahead. Sorry. Is that conclude your presentation?
No, no, we're just getting started. We're just getting started.
Please proceed.
Ready?
Go
All
ahead.
right. So this is some of the comments that we've been getting. Well, let me, sorry. Was there something overriding that you wanted to make sure we said from the stakeholder committee since you worked on it and these are the recommendations from?
You know, I just think the people who came to that, they spent an enormous amount of time. I was really surprised. Everybody, you know, like the emails I got 2 days after you gave out the document, everybody had read everything and had comments about it, were thoughtful. So I really appreciated that level of thinking. And we did add we added the survey and another community meeting. And so we have that data as well. And I think that informed what people talked about, and I offered them all a beer if they came tonight, and I see I'm 0 for 7, so, yeah, I was like, but I hope they will be, when they can make some comments, that they will be here and they will talk about the things that were important to them, not just to what we ended up in the paper. Thanks.
Mayor Robichaux?
So, and I'm going to make a suggestion, and I don't know if this is a motion or, I appreciate, you know, comments that were submitted to you. I'm assuming that's what, but since we also have some elected officials who have not had the opportunity to submit their comments, I mean, I don't know if you really want to go over just those that we've submitted, which is fine, but you gave copies to that, so that maybe waiting, recommendation, that waiting until all of the elected officials who are able to get you in this information and then compiling, because I think you might either see some trends similar and not, I don't know, that's you guys. If y'all want, I mean, I have no problem going over everything I've talked about, but I think this to me would be a very selective group, and I don't think that's.
Yeah, we had a head start. I mean, we
Right.
started talking about this comp plan 6 months ago, I guess. So yeah,
Yeah.
we had, the stakeholder committee had a head start, so it would be a good idea.
Well, no, I mean, we did submit, I mean.
We finished, but they haven't.
But I'm just saying,
That's what I'm saying.
I
We only had a week.
I guess I'm trying to say, I love the concept of providing what all elected officials would have said, or thinking, and maybe that might be an easier way, and I think there's a way you could then trend it even within the elected body, because I think you're going to see, again, probability of some similarities that we would.
Agreed.
But that's a suggestion. I don't know if that's a motion. I don't mean to cut off your.
No, that's okay.
Yeah,
For real.
that's a good idea.
I think, you know, if I can just offer, the next document that this group will get from us will be a draft set of recommendations for what we would edit and change in the comp plan. And that's what we would intend to bring back to the next committee meeting, as Michelle had pointed out. And we'll take all of the consolidated comments that we receive over the next handful of days. We'll be able to provide the supplemental data for all of y'all to look at of what individuals have said. And then what our intent would be is that we're working off hopefully about a 6 or a 7 page document at that point in time. We can go through it and we'll have it section by section so that everybody can read through it, make sure that we're aligned in what the edits need to be. And then assuming that we are, on the 27th, we would bring back essentially a fully new version of the edited document for your adoption.
And kind of as you said too, not only obviously some of the comments, but that would also give you and your team time to answer those, some of us that had questions. I mean, some of mine are, I know I do a lot, okay. But it's questions that might either answer or change some of the recommendation concepts that I would have versus might bring more forward from my perspective. So I might make that, I don't know if that's a recommendation or how do you want to handle it, Randy?
Yeah. Councilmember Hall, you've been waiting for a comment. Go ahead, Councilmember Sells, go ahead, please.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think that would be very helpful for everybody. Will there be public comment? Because they can't comment at the committee meeting. So when will we have some comment about the comments from this group that the citizens, the residents can have a conversation about? When would that be?
So I think, you know, to me, what we would say, two things is when we bring something back on July 14th, that will be the final direction that we have from council to bring recommendations to the 27th meeting. So the community will be aware that this is the final list of edits that will be taking place out of committee and that will be up for consideration at the 27th. The 27th is a public hearing, and so community members will be able to come and speak at that public hearing at the 27th at the dais at that point.
Thank you. Well, then, should I make a motion for?
Councilmember Brumley had a comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
The plan is out there, so anybody, yeah, it's right now, it's part of the packet. So anybody who's hearing, listening, just go look at it. It's lots of fun. I read every single comment. Michelle can attest to that. And I learned a lot. So, and
It's a great beach read, you know?
you know, there's a demographic for this document that it will be a beach read for some of us. But, you know, so right now they can, they can read it and they can read comments. And I know some people have started to give a comment. So, you know, it's at least out there. Tell your friends, tell your family.
Councilmember Hall, did you have a?
Yeah, I had a comment. I also wanted to acknowledge that we had residents and people that were not on a stakeholder committee and others that frequented the meetings. I mean, I know that Mayor and Aaron dropped in, and I saw other folks that dropped in during some of the meetings. So I just want to thank those folks that came and participated by attending and providing their comments during our meetings, during the many meetings that we had, and also just staff. And really, this was, I think, so well done and so much input. And the additional survey that was added was terrific and really brought, it basically really tells the story of what our residents want and how they want our city to move forward. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. Okay, right. It was a discussion item, and I think the direction is to consolidate with additional comments for the 14th meeting. And certainly we encourage residents who have an interest in the comprehensive plan, the content thereof, to reach out to staff, to engage, and obviously the elected officials. And I've seen several emails already, and I'm sure there'll be more to come, which is great. A very robust interest in comprehensive planning process and the plan itself, which is a significant blueprint and guide for growth and development over the next 20 plus years. Councilmember Hall.
Sorry, one more thing, and I just wanted to clarify, just the administrative kind of, I don't want to call them errors, but you know, when you're working with hundreds of pages and there's some erroneous pictures that are in the wrong place that were pointed out in some of the emails. You'll just take care of that. We don't have to separately address that.
We'll identify it on the sheet as it comes in so that everybody is aware at the next committee meeting, even if we're changing a photo or we're making edits, we'll note those in the documents.
And I understand that was nothing, you know, nobody was trying to sneak in a photo of something that doesn't belong. I mean, I know those things happen, so.
Understood.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, any further comments or questions? Again, a very important document before you, and we appreciate the great work that's been done by staff and by elected officials, of course, steering committee, residents, everyone involved thus far. And we look forward to a very successful move toward transmittal, which is extremely important and is the line of demarcation. I will mention again, the transmittal document, not the adoption. It's the transmittal. Yes. Okay. So any further commentary? All right, we're good? It's a motion to adjourn? Okay. Motion to adjourn by Councilmember Beeson, second by Mayor Robichaux. All in favor? All right. There's one opposed to adjournment, I suppose. But... Have a good evening.